Hi, everyone. I'm seeing that it's 10:30 Eastern, so I'm going to get started with our session this morning. So I just wanted to say that I hope you all enjoyed the keynote presentation this morning and that you're feeling, energized for a day of learning and sharing on a really wide variety of topics. Um, the Geographic Education's Anthropocene Education Program is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So I'm very excited to have everyone that's here in this session joining me. And I just wanted to say thank you as well for choosing to spend the day with us and for supporting our organization as well as all of today's presenters. So because we only have an hour, I'd really like to dive right into the presentation on the Anthropocene Education Program. And so this was created in 2018 to bring to life the story of human-environment interactions through an array of multimedia, but also to enhance student understanding of the local scale to planetary scale impacts of human land use by bringing students as close as virtually possible to different locations around the world where the physical evidence of our impacts is really the most evocative. And so I've structured this presentation into 4 parts. So the first will be about a 10-minute crash course on the history and science behind the Anthropocene, just so that we all have a common understanding of what the term truly means. And then the second part is a viewing of part of the documentary called Anthropocene, the Human Epic, which is now freely available on TVO and which was the inspiration behind the education program. And then I'll share an overview of the online and physical resources that are available to you to use with your students at your convenience. And then lastly, I'll open the floor for questions and points of clarification. So maybe just take note of any questions that come to mind or pop them in the chat, and then I'll take a look at them during the Q&A at the end. And maybe keep your pens handy too, or just a document open on your computer, because I'll be sharing some website links in case you want to write those down. Okay, so jumping right into part 1, what is our working definition of the term Anthropocene? So the word comes from the Greek anthropos, meaning human being or man, and kainos, meaning new or recent. And so in other words, the term is describing a recent period of time on Earth characterized by the presence of humans. And so the term came into popular use starting at about the year 2000, when scientists started using it to raise awareness of the fact that modern humans are now rapidly transforming the entirety of the natural world in permanent and irreversible ways at the scale of the entire planet, including, the climate, the ice, the ocean, and biodiversity. So at this point, most scientists were starting to recognize and agree that terms like climate change and environmental crisis weren't really capturing the severity and the complexity and the scale of human-caused global change. And so they began using the term Anthropocene to capture all of this change into one succinct and memorable word. And so many of these scientists were geologists, which, as you know, are responsible for meticulously mapping out and recording the geologic history of the planet. In 2016, a group of geologists went public with their belief that the Earth had undergone so much change at the hands of humans that it had actually quietly slipped into an entirely new geological epoch, which they, of course, suggested should be called the Anthropocene. And so they struck a committee called the Anthropocene Working Group and made a formal proposal to the International Commission in charge of maintaining the geological timescale, suggesting that it formally recognize the end of our current epoch, known as the Holocene, which began about 12,000 years ago, and then begin the Anthropocene epoch as of the year 1950. And so they chose the year 1950 as the start date for the Anthropocene because that's when widespread nuclear testing began, of which there's still chemical evidence in the Earth's soil and atmosphere. It's also when disposable plastics were introduced, which are now unfortunately part of our planet's fabric. And 1950 is also when we see an exponential rise in the human population. And so markers like these, they argue, would be visible in the Earth's sedimentary records for future scientists to find and use to demarcate the exact point when the Holocene ended and the Anthropocene began. And so their proposal in 2016 sent shockwaves through the scientific community, and it's still being heavily debated today for 5 major reasons. So first, never before in the history of the management of the geological timescale has an epoch been proposed in real time. Usually epochs are, backdated by tens of thousands to millions of years based on differences observed in the sedimentary records from before and after. Modern humans, they weren't around millions of years ago, and so we have to rely on the natural differentiation of the Earth's rock layers to understand changes to the planet long after they've happened. And so because we don't know what lies ahead, naming a new epoch as it's unfolding and saying that the Anthropocene began in 1950 is really more of a prediction or a hypothesis. It doesn't derive from the same sedimentary record in the same way that previous epochs have. So there's debate over whether or not it's actually too soon to formally designate the Anthropocene as a new epoch. The second reason, the start date of 1950 is actually viewed by some as a somewhat arbitrary or altogether incorrect date. So for example, there's a large number of scientists who believe the start date of the Anthropocene should actually be the year 1610, which coincides with the Columbian Exchange, or that mass swapping of species and goods and people and diseases between Europe and the Americas in the century after Columbus sailed to the New World. Another group thinks the start date should actually be 8,000 years ago, when the global carbon cycle was first affected by European farmers who were burning forests and making way for eventual rice agriculture. And then others still think that the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s and the transport and the deposition of huge amounts of soot and ash across the world would be a better choice. So for a new epoch to begin, the condition of a long-lasting change to the Earth has to be documented. And all of these events actually meet that criterion. So there's intense debate over which event is the most representative of the beginning of the Anthropocene. And so tied to this is the third reason for debate, and that's the choice of the actual geological marker or signal for the start of the Anthropocene. So the Anthropocene Working Group has identified nuclear fallout, or the radioactive particles that fall to the Earth as a result of a nuclear explosion. That's what they've identified as the best potential marker, because it can be easily detected and detected synchronously in soils across much of the Earth's surface. But other markers that have been proposed, like the formation of a new layer of plastic in the Earth's crust, or the appearance of chemicals that have been synthesized by humans that never existed before in nature, or the ubiquity of materials like concrete, or the transport of invasive species, these have all been identified as potential markers as well. And there's even some very strange markers that have been identified. So I know that there's some research into using the massive amount of chicken bones that are discarded year after year because of our poultry consumption as a marker. And then another brave soul actually proposed the opening of the first McDonald's restaurant as a potential marker. So the fourth reason for debate with respect to the formalization of this epoch is whether or not we actually even need to formalize it. So it's been over 2 decades now that academics and the general public have been using this term. So with everyone knowing, what it means and what concept it applies to and what it represents, at this point, there's global recognition of the undeniable impact humans are having on the planet. So does it even make a difference if we formally add it to the geological timescale? And then lastly, there's considerable debate over the actual name Anthropocene. So other names have been proposed for the sake of highlighting additional characteristics of the Anthropocene. So beyond just the environmental impact. So a few examples are the capitalocene. So this highlights the rise of capitalism as a major source of the current state of the planet. And then there's also the plantation scene, which refers to agriculture slavery, but also the quote unquote slavery of plants, animals, and microbes. And then there's even the Metropocene, which broadly speaking kind of asks us to consider geography and environment, but also people and their psychology and their culture when we're studying the state of the planet. So as you can see, despite a formal proposal being made by the Anthropocene Working Group to the International Commission, there's a great deal of varying opinions and evidence of a potential Anthropocene that's circulating among experts who are trying to define our current geological time period. So at the moment, the International Commission is weighing the name and the start date and the markers and the need for this epoch to be formally recognized against all previous work that's been done on the geological timescale. So they're expected to make a decision later this year. And in the meantime, the Anthropocene Working Group is collecting more evidence from key test sites from around the world, if anything, to just increase our awareness and our understanding of the fact that environmental stability of the Earth has been permanently altered by the activities of industrialized nations. And so this is where the education program comes in. So all of this science and self-reflection and all of these questions and considerations make for a wonderfully rich opportunity to bring geo-inquiry and critical thinking to the classroom. And when it's paired with a collection of audio visuals and augmented and virtual reality experiences, it makes for a wonderfully captivating and experiential opportunity to learn as well. So as I said earlier, the education program is based on the documentary that I have highlighted on the right of the screen here, called Anthropocene, the Human Epic. And it's also based on, there was an internationally touring museum exhibit of the same name. And so these came out in 2018. They were created by Canadian artists, Edward Bertinsky, Nicolas Depensier, and Jennifer Bachwal. And so for part 2 of our session today, I'd like for us to watch a clip from the documentary to build on the foundational knowledge that we just reviewed, so all that heavy science, and to share with you the inspiration behind the educational resources. So the clip is about 8 minutes long. It really has some truly spectacular footage. So I'm going to put that up, and then I'll meet you back here in 8 minutes.
Since Humbug Coal Mine opened
Hi, sorry, I'm just going to pause there. Okay, I see that everyone's not hearing the audio, so I'm just going to try and make one quick change to see if I can correct that. Just bear with me here. Get us back to the start here. All right, can you just give me a sign in the chat if you can hear the audio this time? Perfect. All right, here we go.
Since Humber Coal Mine opened in 1978, 4 towns have been destroyed to make way for its expansion, and 2 more are facing relocation. It is the largest open pit mine in Germany. Terraforming is the act of altering the Earth's surface for human needs. Humans now dominate over 75% of ice-free land because of mining, agriculture, industrialization, and urban growth. The Earth's forests are home to 80% of terrestrial biodiversity and annually absorb 30% of anthropogenic carbon emissions. Less than 10% of old-growth forest remains on Vancouver Island, and raw log exports have increased exponentially since 2014. %85 of the Earth's forests have been cleared, fragmented, or degraded for human use.
This business, it starts from the bush, from the forest. we sponsored some people in the forest to cut the wood for us, the logs, from Bayelsa State, Rivers, Edo, Delta, Ondo, Ogun.
Put your hands together for Jesus. Come on. Now you be one down. Now you be people. Now you be God. That's what I'm talking about. My Father, my Savior, I need you with my praise. Come on, everybody, lift your hands and give him praise.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause it there, and I'm just going to bring my slides back up for a second here. There we go. Okay, so I'm hoping that that short clip was either an intro to the documentary for those of you that haven't seen it yet, and for those of you that have, hopefully it reignited some of your excitement about the possibilities tied to the film and the topics that are covered. The artist described the film as a meditation, a cinematic meditation, I think is how they put it. And you know, when you watch the thing from start to finish, that's really how it feels. It's a beautiful piece of work. And so just to get us all to sort of reflect on what we just saw, could you please write down one word in the chat that comes to mind after watching that sequence? Anything that comes to mind? So we have alarming, impactful, powerful, necessary, question mark, powerful, scary. Any others? Again, impactful, sad, disappointing, fear for our kids' future. Yeah, so it's interesting to see your answers. I find for me one that always comes to mind is scale. It's always striking to me the scale that's conveyed in this documentary, and also the contradiction in scales, because humans appear so small in some of those scenes, yet their destructive activities are just massive in extent. But you also get a sense of overpopulation too from the scene in the church with 1 million churchgoers. And it also highlights beautifully just how intertwined the human and natural worlds are. And the entire documentary is like this. It has stories from China, Iceland, Australia, Canada, etc. And so you would have noticed too that there were a few key definitions that were provided throughout. So things like terraforming and deforestation. So this is done throughout the documentary, which is great for discussion questions afterwards. And these keywords are actually the themes of the 17 lesson plans included in our teacher's guide, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. And so the entire documentary is available for free on tvo.org. So I recommend that you just go to the website and type in the search bar Anthropocene, and the film will be the first result that shows up. And if you're looking for an entry point into the remaining educational materials, this is really a great starting point. And so now we're going to go through the education program website and some of those additional classroom resources. And I'd like to do this first by starting with the photography that's included as part of the program. And I have two quick exercises that I wanted to share with you to sort of highlight the photos. And so the first is a pretty easy one. So we're just going to consider what we think we're seeing on screen here. So I'll give you a minute to just think about what on earth you think this photo might actually be showing, and just maybe type a short answer in the chat. And don't be shy. Any guesses are perfectly acceptable. So we have mountain ridges with rivers in the valleys, tailing ponds, a delta, river connections, elk antlers. I like that one. Melting glaciers, underground tree roots. Interesting. Rills. Ice versus melting. So dry versus now. Yep. These are all really, really good, really thoughtful and creative answers. So I'll let you know what the answer is. So it's actually dryland farming. So it's dryland farming in Aragon, Spain. And this photo was taken by Edward Bertinsky in 2010. And so dryland farming is necessary in this region because they receive so little rainfall throughout the year, and it supports a large population that needs these crops to survive. And the white patches that you see on the left are salt that's been exposed due to constant evaporation. And all the dark patches that you see are where the native plants and weeds have been stripped to basically ensure that all of the water that's available goes to the crops and nothing else. So, you know, this isn't a place where there's a lot of insects or animals, and the ones that are there have adapted to really high salt environments. Okay, I have another one for you. We're going to do something a little different with this one, though. I have 4 questions. And so the first one, I guess, is actually technically 2. So what do you think this is, and where do you think this is? All right, Sherry says a reef on the Pacific Ocean. Jessica says a harmful algal bloom in the ocean. Mike Farley also says algae bloom. A delta. This one I think is a little less cryptic than the first one. Any other guesses? Water near the Pacific Islands, runoff into the ocean. Okay, so, coral bleaching is our last answer. Okay, so I'll give you the answer for this one as well. So this is actually the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which was regarded as one of the largest environmental disasters in our history. So that white stuff that you see on the surface there is the oil dispersant that the cleanup crews release to deal with the oil. And so the good side of that is that it's actually working to reduce the oil that's sitting at the surface of the water, which is very much needed. But the bad side of that is that it actually breaks the oil into smaller droplets, which then disperse more easily in the water, which is essentially distributing the pollution across a greater volume of water. So yes, it saves marine life on the surface from the oil, but the trade-off is it can actually suffocate some of the organisms living underwater who get stuck, sort of wading through the sunken oil. So my next question to you is why there? So you can answer this question in any way you see fit. Why is this happening there? Why? Basically just tap into your geographical knowledge. Why do you think this is happening here? So there's an oil sink at the bottom of the ocean, which equals many dollar signs for greedy oil companies. Profit and greed over safety, dependence on fossil fuels. Any other comments on that? Denial of the oil companies, there is a danger to the ocean itself and the humans' need for oil. Yes, so I think we're all sort of on the same page with that question. So then my third question to you is, why care? So what comes to mind when I ask you, why should we care that this is happening here? It equals environmental devastation. Yep. Biodiversity, everything is connected. Andrew says, all my relations. Good point. Denise says, we all share the same biosphere. Absolute destruction of the environment and the resources we depend on for life. Destruction of biodiversity. So again, I think we're all sort of seeing the same result here. And then my last question to you is, what's next? So again, you can answer this question in the way that you see fit. What comes to mind when I ask you what's next for this issue, for this region, for us, for the biosphere? Susan says, education, comma, prevention, comma, consequences for perpetrators. Mm-hmm. Denise says, let's switch to cleaner sources of energy quickly. A profound reckoning with the way we relate to animals in the natural world. Years of environmental rehabilitation, and hopefully the implementation of new rules and regulations. Yeah, so I'm very happy to see that there's some optimists out there, and that you're looking at the positive changes that can come out of this. and not just the negativity. And that's actually at the crux of the Anthropocene Education Program. So we didn't want this to be like a doom and gloom sort of, set of resources that are going to freak all the students out about the state of the planet and the future of the biosphere. We wanted it to be more of a true learning opportunity and just, sharing the reality of the situation in a way that's sensitive and understandable and manageable. Skip the slide. So all of those photos, I only showed you two, but those photos are part of a collection that Edward Bertinsky kindly shared with us as part of this program, and that he's made public on his website. And I'll show you that in just a second, but I wanted to stop here and just say that everything that I show you from this point on is available through this website. So our program website, anthropocene.canadiangeographic.ca. So I'm just going to jump to that because I find it's easier to go through the program directly using the website. So this is the splash page when you land. And then when you get there, you have four options. So there's an about section with a bit of history about the program. There's a trailer so that you can see the resources in action. There's a teacher toolkit, which is what we're going to focus on mostly. And then there's also a school kit, which I'm going to talk about at the end. So I'm going to go to the teacher toolkit, and I'm just going to scroll down for starters, and then I'm going to come back up. But I just wanted to share, so the links to Edward Bertinsky's galleries are on this page. So I'm just going to go to his Anthropocene specific gallery. And so you can see he has some quotes here and some thumbnails, and then you can bring up these high-res images either on your smartboard or individually on student tablets, and you can run your own activities that way. I'm just going to go back to our page for a second here. And then just a side note, so I mentioned that this is all based on the documentary and the touring museum exhibit. So there's a link to that website, so the website of the Anthropocene project proper that the artists created. And so if you go there, they have a little bit more information about their side of things. So from there, I just want to go through individually what else is available to you. So at the top of the page, we have a direct link to the documentary. So if you forget to go to tvo.org, you can connect directly to the documentary using this link. The second thing that we have that we're very proud of is a really neat Google Earth story. And so what we did was we took, I think about 26, 27 of the really evocative locations that are shown in the documentary, and we sort of compiled a Google Earth story that they can then visit those locations and look at them in more detail. So if I go to the table of contents here, just for continuity's sake, I'm going to show you the Hambach mine. That was the first scene in that clip that we just watched from the documentary. So you can see clear connections between this and all of the other resources. So, they can explore via Google Earth. And then on the right-hand side, we have an image from Edward Bertinsky. And then there's a little bit more information and also some additional resources. We just have so many resources connected to this program. So for this one, there's actually a Google Earth time lapse that Google has developed for this specific site. And so we have it linked here so that the students can see it changing over the last, I think, 25 to 30 years. And so there's a number of different locations, as I said, in this Google Earth story. So going back to our website, the next thing I'd like to point out is our online interactive gigapixels. So we have 4 of them from different locations. And so these are really neat. Students, in my experience, really enjoy using these. And they're basically like a Where's Waldo using a high-res image. So if I go into one, I'm going to go to the Scarborough transfer station. So this is a shot from one of the recycling facilities in Scarborough. And basically, you can zoom in and zoom out and you can pan around. And the objective is to identify the 5 or 6 triggers that are embedded in this image to then launch video extensions or different experiences that just elaborate on the sort of theme of the gigapixel. So I know where these triggers are because I'm familiar with this. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to go directly to one. So if you go to this dark plastic bag here, you can see that there's a trigger that pops up on the screen. And if I click on that, you'll see that there's a little film extension that's going to play. So I'm not going to play that. I just wanted to show you how it works. So there's 4 there. I would encourage you to take your own time and go through them. They're quite interesting. And then I'm going to go to the 360-degree videos next. So these are really neat. These don't require any sort of special device. You can look at these on a computer or a tablet or a smartphone. And so I'm just going to open one of them. And it's basically a 360-degree snapshot of a portion of the documentary. So really, immersing students directly in the location and in showing them what the film crew was basically living while they were creating the documentary. So I'm just going to show you here, when I say 360-degree, it's like you're basically at the location and you're looking around. And this one's pretty funny because at one point the elephants run over and they knock over the camera, and I don't know what it is, but the students just laugh their heads off whenever that happens. So I'll pause that there. So there's 3 of those. There's the Ivory Burn site in Kenya, where they did a large burn of tusks in a ecological statement. There's a site, the Dandora landfill, and then there's a marble quarry site. So then an amazing resource is the teacher's guide. So right here, it's broken up into so that you can download the full teacher's guide at the top, and then it's broken down into activity cards that you can print out for students to use with some of these other resources that I've been showing you. So the teacher's guide, I'll just open it up so you can take a quick look. It's a beautiful PDF, and in it, so there's 17, sorry, I know that's fast, but I'm just trying to get to one of our themes. There's 17 lessons on large themes like bioaccumulation, terraforming, anthroturbation, biodiversity loss, so major themes. And these are super comprehensive lesson plans. There's so much information in here. And there are suggestions on how to use the different resources that I've just gone through, so the photographs and the videos. And there's discussion questions and prompts. There's activities specific to the gigapixels. There's just a lot packed into here. So again, you'll take some time to go through that. And it also makes recommendations as to which Edward Bratinsky photos match up really nicely with that particular theme. One thing I want to point out here is that there are recommendations to use the online gigapixels and also the physical giant gigapixel that we have printed that's available to you. So the image is the same as the Scarborough transfer station that I showed you earlier, and it's just like a 5 by 8 meter. No, that's small. It's larger than that. I have to check the dimensions, but it's like half the size of a school gymnasium print of the recycling pile from the Scarborough transfer station. And so there's activities recommended in the teacher's guide to go with that as well. And so if you don't have the physical copy, you can actually use the teacher's guide with the online copy as well. And then I'm not going to go through them, but like I said, there are individual activity cards that you can use with the teacher's guide as well. And then so I do want to talk about the kit just a little bit. So I'm going to flip over to that page, to our school kit page. So essentially, We had several school kids touring over the last 2 years, and unfortunately, I'm going to say because students were so excited, we got quite a few of them back and they were damaged and had damaged equipment. So we're down to 4 at the moment. And those kits contain the teacher's guide. There are additional augmented reality triggers. So they're kind of like posters that you can tack onto the wall, and you scan them with a tablet or a smartphone, and then you get sort of like a 3D rendering in front of you. There are, oh, here we go. It's a 5 by 10 meter gigapixel. So you get a copy of that. And then there are also Oculus headsets, headphones, and iPads that are available as part of the kit. So I have a few caveats to mention here. Obviously, so this kit is available to you for a 3-week period during the school year. You can book it through our website. However, we are no longer touring them for free. So our sort of funding for the program has come to an end. And so we're making it available to anyone who is able to cover the shipping costs to be able to get it to their school or organization. And so obviously with all of these different components, it's a pretty heavy kit. So the shipping costs will be high depending on where you are. So we'd really like to adapt the kit as much as possible to get it to you in a reasonably, costed way. So if you have Oculus headsets in your class, or if you have iPads, or if there's anything in here that you don't really think you need, but you would like us to ship you the giant gigapixel, for example, we can totally do that. We can just ship you sort of a subset of what's included in the kit here. And it'll be significantly cheaper than shipping the whole thing. And so maybe just to point out, why you would opt for the kit rather than what's online. There's just a few things that are exclusive to it. So like I said, the giant floor gigapixel, the 3 augmented reality triggers, and then obviously the virtual headsets and the iPads. But the Oculus headsets come preloaded with videos that the artists have kindly shared with us. And, if you feel like you could get away without the Oculus headsets and maybe use a Google Cardboard or some sort of other viewer that you could just slot your smartphone into, you have that option too. So I'm going to just go back to the Teacher Toolkit webpage. And so this section that says associated apps, this is where you can access the virtual reality portion of what's included in the kits and what's available to you. So the Avara Discover app is the one that lets you play around with the augmented reality triggers. And then there's the Anthropocene VR app, which is available through Google Play and the App Store. And I think there's maybe 4 or 5 videos that are embedded in that app that, like I said, students can just put their smartphone into a Google Cardboard and watch it that way. So avoiding having to use the very expensive, very heavy Oculus headsets. And so I'm conscious of time. We have about 10 minutes left. So I would like to share with you the sort of trailer that we made for the entire program, just so that you can have a solid understanding of what all of these different components are and sort of what they look like in use. And then we'll have our Q&A session at the end, and I can answer any questions that have come up. So I'm just going to head back here. And so here's our trailer.
Through a partnership with the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, the Anthropocene Project has created a one-of-a-kind bilingual education program for Canadian classrooms. By providing classrooms with immersive learning tools that incorporate film, photography, and augmented and virtual reality, this program is an opportunity to experience the history and science of the Anthropocene while learning about the impacts of everyday human activities on the Earth's natural systems. Through virtual reality, students will travel to the marble quarries in Carrara, Italy, witness the historic ivory burn in Nairobi, Kenya, explore the expansive Dandora landfill, and observe the life cycle and impact of plastics right here in Canada. With the use of high-resolution photographs that have been stitched together to create gigapixel images, students will explore different environments and discover areas around the world affected by various levels of human land use. Students can participate in group learning activities where they can critically review scientific research and action-based initiatives and discuss their own ecological footprints and eco-friendly habits. The provided learning materials give them an opportunity to brainstorm greener solutions and develop sustainability strategies for our society. A gymnasium-sized floor gigapixel invites students to walk amongst and explore Canadian household wastes and recyclables. Engaging with different foam extensions provides an even greater understanding of waste management in Canada. Students can compare their household products to what is visible on the floor gigapixel. They will no doubt be encouraged to brainstorm ways to reduce their own consumption. The Anthropocene Education Program resources are available online to members of Canadian Geographic Education and include a teacher's guide with 14 lesson plans designed for grades 4 to 12, interactive gigapixels, a library of video clips from around the world, a high-resolution set of Edward Bertinsky's photographs. Educators can also book a free classroom kit for 3 weeks during the school year. The kits include the teacher's guide, exclusive augmented reality experiences, a 15 by 30 foot floor gigapixel, a set of 10 iPads, a set of 10 Oculus headsets, and 10 headphones. To access the educational materials or book a kit, please visit canadiangeographic.ca/Anthropocene.
All right. So sorry, a couple corrections. I just realized that there's 2 things that are incorrect in the trailer. So again, just reiterating that we unfortunately have to send out the kits at the cost of shipping to our members, and also that our website has since been updated. So I shared the correct one with you earlier in the session. So we have about 7 minutes left. I'm going to stop there because I feel like that was a lot of information to share with you in 1 hour. I'll say thank you to anyone who has everything that they need and wants to head out in advance of the next session. And I'll hang around to answer any questions that you have. And so you're more than welcome to come on camera with me and talk with me, or you can just make use of the chat. So thanks very much.